There is a strange silence before heaven moves. The soul often mistakes delay for denial, not realizing that God is preparing a table too large for ordinary expectations. You have cried in hidden places, carried burdens without applause, and walked through seasons where nothing seemed to answer your faith. Yet the very doors that refused to open were only protecting you from smaller rooms. God is not bringing you a scattered blessing. He is bringing an offer that will shift your direction, restore your confidence, and prove that divine timing is never late. What is coming toward you is greater than your calculations, deeper than your prayers, and larger than the limits others placed upon your life. In life, when God seems distant, not because he has abandoned the soul, but because he is leading it through a deeper corridor of preparation. Human beings naturally desire visible answers. We wish to see the door while we are still walking toward it. We long for certainty before obedience, proof before patience, and arrival before endurance. Yet God, in his wisdom, often conceals the greatest opportunities until the spirit has become mature enough to carry them without destruction. Ably. Singing revealed too early can become a burden instead of a gift. Many people pray for elevation while still carrying the mind of fear, pride, impatience, or insecurity. Heaven understands that what is received before the soul is strengthened can easily be lost through weakness of character. This is why some doors remained closed no matter how hard you knocked. It was not because your prayers lacked sincerity. It was because God could see beyond your immediate desire into the future consequences of premature success. There are seasons when the soul must be refined in hidden places where no applause exists. In those quiet stretches of life, God removes false dependence on people, false confidence in appearances, and false understanding of worth. He teaches the heart how to stand when nothing external seems stable. The hidden years are never wasted years. They are the workshop where God prepares a person for responsibilities too sacred to be handled carelessly. Many souls become discouraged because they compare their timeline to the visible success of others. They see someone else entering opportunities, receiving recognition, or gaining influence, and they quietly wonder why heaven remains silent over their own life. But comparison blinds people to divine design. God does not prepare every soul in the same manner. Some blessings require deeper foundations because they are intended to carry greater weight. A small house may stand upon shallow ground, but a towering structure must be anchored far beneath the surface before it can rise. What feels like delay is often excavation. God digs deeply into the spirit before he builds greatly upon it. There is also a sacred loneliness that often accompanies preparation. The soul begins to feel separated from environments that once felt comfortable. Conversations lose meaning. Certain friendships grow distant. Familiar ambitions no longer satisfy the heart. This can create confusion because the old season is fading while the new season has not yet appeared. Yet this uncomfortable transition is evidence that God is reshaping your desires to fit the future he intends to give you. A person cannot carry a divine assignment while remaining chained to small thinking. God enlarges vision before he enlarges territory. The world often celebrates visible achievement while ignoring invisible transformation. Yet heaven works in the opposite direction. God first changes the inner life before changing external conditions. He teaches patience before promotion, humility before influence, wisdom before increase. Without those hidden lessons, success would merely expose the weaknesses already living inside the soul. That is why some people rise quickly and collapse suddenly. Their opportunity exceeded their spiritual preparation. But when God prepares a soul carefully, the blessing does not simply arrive with excitement, it arrives with stability. Even the disappointments you endured were part of this preparation. Some rejections protected you from paths that would have reduced your calling. Some failures shattered illusions that needed to die before true purpose could emerge. Some closed doors were acts of mercy disguised as frustration. Looking back, you may one day realize that God was guarding you from becoming attached to things far beneath what heaven intended for your life. What seemed cruel in one season may later appear compassionate when viewed through the wisdom of divine timing. There are blessings so large that they require a transformed identity before they can be received. God is not merely trying to give you something, he is shaping you into someone capable of carrying it with grace, wisdom, and endurance. The hiddenness, the waiting, the unanswered prayers, and the quiet stretching of your faith were never signs of abandonment. They were signs that heaven was building depth within you before revealing the door that was always meant to open, and in that hidden process, many people fail to understand the true purpose of delay. Human nature interprets waiting as rejection because the heart measures time through emotion rather than wisdom. When prayers are not answered immediately, discouragement begins whispering dangerous conclusions into the soul. A person starts believing they have been forgotten, overlooked, or denied by God. Yet heaven does not operate according to human impatience. God sees the entire road while humanity sees only the present moment. What appears slow from the earth may actually be perfect timing from eternity. The soul often asks God for increase without realizing the weight attached to answered prayers. Greater opportunities demand greater endurance. Larger assignments require deeper maturity. Influence, favor, and elevation may appear attractive from distance, but they carry pressures that an unprepared spirit cannot sustain. This is why God delays certain blessings until the inner life becomes strong enough to survive the very thing being requested. Delay is not evidence of cruelty. It is evidence of divine intelligence protecting the future from the weaknesses of the present. There are seasons when God intentionally slows the journey because the soul is still learning dependence upon Him rather than dependence upon outcomes. Many people love blessings more than they love the one who gives them. They pursue open doors, success, recognition, and validation, yet their faith collapses the moment circumstances become uncertain. So God allows waiting periods where visible progress disappears and only trust remains. In those barren moments, faith either deepens or dies. The soul begins to learn how to walk with God even when there is no immediate reward attached to obedience. The wilderness seasons of life are painful precisely because they expose what the heart truly worships. When comfort is removed, hidden fears emerge. When certainty disappears, insecurity rises to the surface. When opportunities are delayed, pride begins, wrestling against humility. Yet these internal battles are not meaningless suffering. They are preparation. God is strengthening parts of the soul that prosperity alone could never develop. Some lessons can only be learned in silence. Some forms of wisdom are born only through endurance. What you called stagnation was often spiritual construction taking place beneath the surface. Just as roots grow unseen before a tree becomes visible above the ground, God establishes strength in hidden places before releasing visible increase. The tragedy is that many people abandon their journey during the invisible stage because they mistake hidden growth for absence of progress. They cannot see what heaven is building within them. Yet the strongest foundations are always formed underground where human eyes cannot admire them. There is also mercy within divine delay. Sometimes God withholds certain opportunities because the people surrounding you are not meant to enter your next season. If the blessing had arrived earlier, unhealthy relationships would have attached themselves to your future. Wrong influences would have gained access to sacred territory. So God allows separation before elevation. He permits certain exits, disappointments, and lonely seasons because not everyone assigned to your past deserves access to your destiny. The delay was not empty suffering, it was divine protection working quietly behind circumstances you could not yet understand. Even your disappointments carried hidden instruction. Every unanswered prayer forced the soul to grow beyond shallow expectations. Every closed door developed resilience. Every painful season expanded your spiritual vision. You began learning that God's plan is not measured merely by immediate comfort, but by eternal purpose. The soul that survives delay with faith intact becomes dangerous to fear, because it no longer depends entirely on visible evidence to believe in divine promises. Many people desire the crown but resist the preparation required to wear it wisely. Yet God is not interested in temporary excitement. He desires lasting transformation. A sudden blessing given to an unstable soul may produce pride, recklessness, or self-destruction. But when God delays, He is refining motives, strengthening character, and teaching wisdom through endurance. What feels heavy now is shaping the very strength you will need later. Heaven prepares people differently because heaven understands the unique weight attached to every assignment. And while you believed you were merely surviving difficult seasons, God was actually enlarging your capacity. He was teaching you how to carry disappointment without bitterness, uncertainty without surrender, and loneliness without losing faith. Those hidden battles were creating spiritual muscles that cannot be formed through comfort alone. The soul that learns endurance during delay becomes capable of stewarding blessings without being destroyed by them. What is coming into your life will require a stronger version of you than the one who first prayed for it. And that stronger version is being formed even now in places no human one can fully see there. Comes a moment in every weary soul's journey when heaven begins to answer exhaustion with favor. Not the shallow kind of favor that merely attracts attention for a season, but the deep and undeniable favor of God that changes the atmosphere around a person's life. Before that moment arrives, however, the soul often walks through long valleys of discouragement where strength feels thin and hope becomes difficult to carry. There are nights when prayers feel heavier than usual, mornings when purpose seems distant, and days when even simple obedience feels exhausting. Yet many fail to realize that weariness itself can become the final stage before divine breakthrough. The human spirit is often emptied before it is filled anew. God understands the secret burdens people carry behind their public appearance. Others may see composure, while heaven sees the hidden battles, the silent tears, the private disappointments, and the constant effort required just to remain faithful. There are souls who continue serving, believing, and enduring while inwardly feeling drained by delay after delay. They wonder how much longer they must stand in faith before something changes. Yet God never ignores exhausted obedience. Heaven keeps record of every unseen sacrifice, every moment of perseverance, and every act of trust offered during seasons when no visible reward appeared. Weariness has a dangerous voice if allowed to remain unchecked. It whispers that nothing will improve, that prayers are ineffective, and that the future will simply resemble the pain of the past. The longer a difficult season continues, the or temptation arises to lower expectations. Some people no longer dream boldly because disappointment trained them to expect less from life. Others continue moving forward physically while their hearts quietly surrender internally. They survive, but they no longer anticipate joy. This is one of the enemy's greatest victories, not merely making a soul suffer, but convincing it to stop expecting God to move greatly. Yet divine favor often enters precisely when human strength has reached its limit. God allows certain seasons to stretch beyond personal ability, so that when restoration comes, the soul clearly recognizes its source. Human effort alone cannot explain divine turnaround. There are moments when opportunities appear unexpectedly, doors open without logical explanation, and people begin recognizing value in you that they once ignored. What once required constant struggle suddenly begins moving with unusual grace. This is not coincidence. It is heaven shifting the season. The favor of God does not merely change circumstances, it changes perception. The same person overlooked in one season becomes sought after in another. The same voice ignored before begins carrying influence. See, the same gifts unnoticed for years suddenly create opportunities no human connection could manufacture. God has a way of causing the right people to notice you at the right moment. What striving could not achieve, divine favor accomplishes with quiet authority. Many souls mistakenly believe favor means the absence of struggle, but true favor often emerges after long endurance. The hardship was not pointless, it prepared the soul to carry blessings with humility rather than arrogance. People who have suffered deeply tend to value opportunities differently. They understand what it means to wait. They recognize the sacredness of answered prayers because they remember the pain of unanswered ones. God often trusts greater favor to those who have been broken enough to remain dependent upon Him. There is also a holy restoration that comes when heaven touches a weary spirit. It is possible for the body to remain tired while the soul becomes renewed. Suddenly hope begins returning where despair once lived. Vision awakens again. The future no longer feels closed and narrow. Strength begins rising quietly within the heart. What once felt impossible no longer appears unreachable. God breathes courage back into places where fear had settled for too long. You may not yet fully understand how close you are to the very shift you once prayed for. Weariness created the illusion that nothing was changing, but unseen movement has already begun. God has been arranging conversations, opportunities, alignments, and open doors beyond your sight. Favor is often prepared in hidden places before it becomes visible in earthly reality. What heaven has ordained does not require endless striving to survive. When the appointed season arrives, the right doors begin opening with a peace that human manipulation could never create. The exhaustion you carried was never meant to destroy you permanently. It was shaping compassion, patience, discernment, and dependence upon God. And now the same soul that endured silent battles is approaching a season where grace will speak louder than struggle. The burdens that once weakened your spirit will not define your future forever, because God has already prepared moments of unexpected favor that will remind you why you survived every dark and difficult season in the first place. There are blessings God prepares that are so extraordinary they can know, to be explained by ordinary reasoning. Human beings naturally build expectations around what seems possible according to present conditions. They measure the future through visible resources, current limitations, past experiences, and the opinions of others. If opportunities appear too large, too sudden, or too impossible, the mind immediately begins searching for logical explanations. Yet God has never been confined by the boundaries that restrict human understanding. Heaven does not consult earthly limitations before releasing divine provision. What appears unrealistic to people may already be fully arranged in the unseen realm. Many souls unknowingly shrink their expectations because disappointment trained them to expect survival instead of abundance. After enduring repeated setbacks, rejection, unanswered prayers, and seasons of silence, people begin protecting themselves from further pain by lowering their hopes. They stop imagining great possibilities because smaller expectations feel safer. The heart convinces itself that avoiding disappointment is wiser than believing boldly again. Yet this quiet surrender creates invisible walls around the soul. A person may continue living outwardly while inwardly no longer expecting God to move in powerful ways. But God often works beyond the borders of human imagination, precisely because he desires to reveal his authority rather than human ability. If every blessing could be explained through natural effort alone, people would worship their own strength instead of trusting divine power. This is why heaven sometimes waits until situations appear impossible before releasing breakthrough. God allows human confidence to exhaust itself so the soul can finally witness what grace alone can accomplish. The offer approaching your life may not resemble anything you previously expected. It may arrive through unfamiliar people, surprising opportunities, unexpected timing, or doors you never imagined would open. God is not limited to the pathways you created in your mind. Sometimes the very thing you prayed for arrives in a form you almost failed to. Recognize because heaven answered beyond the narrow picture your imagination constructed. The soul expects a stream while God prepares an ocean. There are moments when divine favor interrupts ordinary patterns so suddenly that the mind struggles to comprehend what is happening. One conversation changes direction. One opportunity shifts an entire future. One connection opens doors that years of striving could never force open. Human logic calls these moments coincidence, but heaven calls them appointed timing. God knows how to position people, circumstances, and opportunities with precision no human strategy could fully orchestrate. This is why fear often attacks before major breakthrough arrives. The closer a soul comes to divine expansion, the louder insecurity becomes. The mind begins listing reasons why the opportunity may fail, why the blessing may disappear, or why the person may not be worthy enough to receive it. Fear always attempts to keep people emotionally attached to smaller lives because familiarity feels safer than transformation. Yet God did not create you merely to survive within the limits of fear. He created the soul to grow beyond the boundaries that once seemed permanent. There is also a danger in becoming too dependent upon logic alone. Wisdom is valuable, but human understanding has limits. Some doors open because of qualifications, while others open purely because God has spoken. The world teaches people to trust only what can be calculated, predicted, or controlled, but faith often requires stepping toward possibilities that cannot yet be fully explained. Abraham walked without knowing the destination. Moses stood before impossible waters. David faced giants while possessing no visible advantage. Again and again, Scripture reveals that God delights in working through situations human logic would dismiss as impossible. The soul must therefore learn not to reject blessings simply because they appear larger than personal expectations. Many people sabotage divine opportunities because they cannot imagine themselves living inside answered prayers greater than their previous reality. They carry old insecurities into new seasons. They continue thinking like the person who suffered yesterday, even while God is preparing increase for tomorrow. Yet heaven cannot pour new wine into minds still imprisoned by old fear. God is preparing opportunities that will challenge the limits of what you thought your life could become. Not because you earned perfection, but because grace delights in exceeding expectation. What is coming may stretch your imagination, confront your insecurity, and force you to depend upon God in deeper ways than before. The same God who carried you through hidden seasons is fully capable of guiding you through expanded territory. And when the moment arrives, you will realize that the years of waiting were not leading towards something small or temporary. Heaven was preparing an answer far greater than your original request. The closed doors, the painful delays, the exhausting uncertainty, and the lonely seasons were never evidence that God had forgotten you. They were preparing your soul for a blessing too large to fit inside the narrow expectations you once carried within your heart. There is a mysterious work God accomplishes in silence that noise could never achieve. Human beings often fear silent seasons because they associate silence with absence. When prayers seem unanswered, opportunities disappear, and visible progress slows, the soul begins wondering whether heaven has withdrawn. Yet some of God's greatest transformations occur where there is no public recognition, no applause, and no immediate evidence that anything meaningful is happening. Silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is the sacred environment where God builds strength too deep for shallow attention. The modern world trains people to value constant movement, immediate results, and visible achievement. If nothing appears to be happening externally, society assumes nothing important exists internally. But heaven works differently. God is far more concerned with the condition of the soul than the speed of external success. A person may rise publicly while remaining weak inwardly, and eventually hidden weakness reveals itself under the pressure of greater responsibility. This is why God often slows the process. He understands that success without inner formation can become destruction disguised as opportunity. Many people ask God for influence, prosperity, recognition, or promotion while secretly lacking the emotional and spiritual endurance required to survive those very blessings. The soul imagines success will remove insecurity, yet success often magnifies whatever already exists within a person. Pride becomes larger, fear becomes louder, weakness becomes more visible. If character has not been strengthened beforehand, elevation can expose a soul rather than bless it. So God uses silence as a training ground where inner stability is developed away from public attention. Here are battles fought in hidden places that prepare people for victories visible later. The lonely nights, the disappointments no one understood, the seasons where progress seemed painfully slow, all of it forms strength that comfort alone could never create. Pain has a way of deepening wisdom when the soul allows God to shape it rather than harden it. Some people become bitter in silence, while others become stronger. The difference often lies in whether the soul chooses resentment or surrender during difficult seasons. Silence also reveals what truly controls the heart. When distractions disappear and visible rewards are removed, a person begins confronting deeper realities within themselves. In quiet seasons, insecurity becomes visible. Fear surfaces. Pride loses its hiding place. The soul can no longer depend upon constant validation from people or circumstances. And though this process feels uncomfortable, it is often necessary because hidden chains cannot be broken until they are exposed. God sometimes removes visible momentum not to punish the soul, but to teach it how to remain rooted without external encouragement. Anyone can feel confident during seasons of abundance, but only a transformed spirit can remain faithful during uncertainty. Silence teaches endurance. It teaches the soul to trust God even when emotions fluctuate and circumstances appear unchanged. This kind of faith becomes unshakable because it no longer depends entirely upon visible proof. There is also wisdom developed through waiting that instant success could never produce. People who receive everything quickly often lack discernment because they never learned patience. But those who walk through long valleys begin recognizing the value of timing, character, and spiritual sensitivity. They learn not to chase every opportunity blindly. They understand the importance of peace, wisdom, and divine direction. The silent seasons sharpen discernment in ways excitement never could. Even your failures during quiet seasons carried hidden lessons. God allowed certain disappointments because they exposed areas that still required healing. Some relationships ended because they could not survive where God was leading you. Some dreams collapsed because they were too small compared to your actual calling. What looked like loss was often redirection. Heaven was removing distractions before, entrusting you with greater purpose. The soul rarely understands this process while living through it. During silence, people often feel forgotten. They compare themselves to others who seem to be advancing faster and wonder why their own life feels delayed. Yet comparison blinds people to the unique preparation God designs for each individual. Some assignments require deeper roots, because they are intended to carry greater weight. The larger the future, the stronger the foundation must become. And while you feared nothing was changing, strength was quietly forming within you. Your endurance increased. Your discernment deepened. Your dependence upon God became more genuine. You learned how to survive uncertainty without completely collapsing. The silent season trained your spirit to carry future blessings with wisdom rather than recklessness. What once felt like abandonment was actually preparation happening beneath the surface. One day you will look back and realize the silence was not empty at all. God was building a version of you capable of standing inside answered prayers without losing humility, peace, or faith. The hidden season was creating stability for the very success you once begged heaven to release before your soul was truly ready to carry it. There is a moment God allows in many journeys when the truth can no longer remain hidden. For a long time, people may misunderstand your silence, dismiss your struggle, or overlook your value because they only judge what they can immediately see. Human beings often measure worth through visible success, public recognition, wealth, influence, or status. When those things appear absent, many quickly assume a person carries little significance. Yet heaven has never evaluated souls according to temporary appearances. God sees potential where others see weakness. He sees purpose where others see delay. And in His appointed time, He reveals what human eyes failed to recognize. Some of the deepest pain a person experiences comes not from hardship itself, but from being doubted while enduring hardship. There are seasons when you silently carry burdens, while others misinterpret your struggle as failure. People question your decisions, criticize your pace, or quietly assume your prayers lead nowhere. Some may even speak discouragement directly into your spirit, insisting that your dreams are unrealistic or your faith misplaced. Over time, constant doubt from others can become emotionally exhausting because human beings naturally desire understanding and support. Yet God sometimes allows misunderstanding because He is teaching the soul how to remain faithful without constant validation. The opinions of people are unstable because most individuals speak according to limited vision. They judge the present moment without understanding the hidden process God is unfolding beneath the surface. They see the seed but cannot imagine the tree. They see the wilderness but cannot perceive the promised land waiting beyond it. Human judgment is often premature because it lacks eternal perspective. Many people who criticized Noah eventually saw rain. Many who dismissed Joseph later stood before his authority. Again and again, Scripture reveals that God delights in overturning human assumptions through unexpected elevation. There is also something dangerous about seeking too much approval from people during preparation seasons. If your identity becomes dependent upon applause, criticism will destroy your peace. God therefore allows certain lonely periods where external encouragement becomes scarce so His soul can learn to draw confidence from Him alone. This process feels painful because it strips away false dependence upon human recognition. Yet hidden within that pain is freedom. The soul slowly learns that obedience matters more than popularity and divine approval matters more than temporary opinion. The people who doubted you were never your ultimate authority. Some doubted because they projected their own fears onto your future. Others doubted because your growth made them uncomfortable. Some simply lacked the spiritual vision to recognize what God placed inside you. Human beings often resist what they do not understand. When a person carries unusual calling, uncommon faith, or deeper purpose, they may appear strange to those satisfied with smaller expectations. Yet heaven never requires universal approval before fulfilling divine promises. What makes God's vindication so powerful is that it often happens without striving for revenge. God does not need you to fight every misunderstanding personally. Time itself becomes evidence when heaven begins opening doors no human effort could manufacture. The same people who overlooked your value may later witness favor resting upon your life in ways impossible to deny. Not because God desires to humiliate others, but because He desires to reveal His faithfulness openly. There comes a point where results speak louder than criticism ever could. Yet even in moments of elevation, God calls the soul to remain humble. Vindication becomes dangerous when pride enters the heart. Some people spend so many years feeling rejected that when success finally arrives, bitterness tempts them to seek superiority over those who once doubted them. But true spiritual maturity does not celebrate revenge. It recognizes that grace, not personal perfection, opened the door. The same God who lifts a person upward also commands them to walk in humility, compassion, and wisdom. Your difficult seasons developed qualities many doubters never saw forming within you. While others focused only on visible delay, God was strengthening patience, resilience, discernment, and faith inside your spirit. The hidden years shaped depth within you that quick success could never create. People may have mistaken your silence for weakness, but heaven was building endurance strong enough to survive future responsibilities. And when God begins revealing the work He accomplished in your hidden seasons, many will struggle to understand how suddenly things changed. Doors that remained closed for years will begin opening. Opportunities once impossible will become reality. Favor will appear in places where rejection once lived. The same journey others mocked will become evidence of divine guidance. What heaven has ordained cannot remain hidden forever. The people who doubted your journey were only witnessing one unfinished chapter of your story. They interpreted delay as defeat because they could not see what God was preparing beyond the present moment. But God often saves His greatest revelations for the very souls others underestimated the most. And the same hand that carried you through obscurity is fully capable of bringing you into a season where His faithfulness becomes visible to everyone who once questioned whether your waiting had any meaning at all.